Hey guys, welcome back. So, have you ever been around startup founders and they start throwing around words like pivots, MVPs, and bootstrapping, and you feel like you're listening to a totally foreign language? Yeah, it can feel pretty intimidating. But I promise, the core ideas are way simpler than you think. Today, we're going to crack open that playbook and translate the language of startups, concept by concept. Let's get started. I love starting with this quote from Harvard Business School because it just frames everything so perfectly. It's not about what you have in the bank, it's about what you see out in the world. See, entrepreneurship isn't just a job title, it's a mindset. It's about being relentlessly focused on an opportunity, even when you have nothing to start with. This one idea, it's the key that unlocks everything else we're going to talk about. All right, so let's start our journey by defining the hero of this story, right? The entrepreneur. Who is this person really? So the official definition from the U.S. Small Business Administration boils it down to three key actions: organizing, managing, and, this is the most important part, assuming the risk. That last bit is really the heart of it all, that willingness to put something on the line for a potential reward. That's what truly defines an entrepreneur. But before we go any further, we've got to clear the air and just debunk some of these common myths. First off, this whole idea that you're born with it, it's just a nice story. Plenty of successful founders start way later in life. Second, you do not need to be a genius. In fact, things like perseverance and a killer work ethic are way more important. And finally, you don't need a ton of money to get started. You can absolutely start small and grow from there. So if it's not about being a genius or having deep pockets, what's the one trait every single entrepreneur has to have? It's a high tolerance for risk. I mean, think about this staggering fact. Something like 95% of all startups fail. An entrepreneur is someone who looks at those odds and is still willing to go all in. Being okay with that massive chance of failure, that is the true mark of an entrepreneur. Okay, so once an entrepreneur decides to take that leap, they immediately hit a major crossroads. This is a huge, fundamental choice that's going to shape their entire company. Are they going to sell a product or are they going to offer a service? You know, the core difference here is actually pretty simple. A product business sells a thing, whether it's something tangible you can hold or something digital you download. A service business, on the other hand, completes a task for you. But, and this is a big but, this choice has a huge impact on how you can grow. It's generally way easier to scale a product business. You just make more things. Scaling a service, well, that often means hiring more people to do the service for more customers, and that's a lot harder to do quickly. And this is a perfect way to think about it. Apple is a classic product business, right? They design, manufacture, and sell you an iPhone. But the person who fixes your cracked screen, they're running a service business. They're performing a task for you. One company sells the what, and the other sells the how. Now, in the modern era, this really cool hybrid model has popped up that kind of blurs the lines. Software as a service, or what everyone calls SaaS. You pay a recurring fee, like a monthly subscription, to get access to software online. Think about Spotify or Dropbox. You don't own the product forever, and it's not a person performing a task. It's this brilliant bridge between the two that has totally reshaped the digital economy. Okay, so you've got a founder and you've got a business type. Now comes the real ordeal. This is the central challenge every single entrepreneur has to face, proving that their brilliant idea is actually any good in the real world. This quote from Eric Ries, the author of The Lean Startup, is, well, it's brutally honest, but it's so important. An idea that sounds absolutely genius in your head is often, not. This is exactly why entrepreneurs can't just trust their gut. They have to test their assumptions with actual real-life customers. So how do they do that? How do they test their ideas? They use the simple but incredibly powerful cycle, the lean startup feedback loop. First, you build the smallest possible version of your idea. Then, you measure how real people react to it. And finally, based on that data, you learn. You either adapt your idea or you pivot to something new. Build, measure, learn. And then you do it all over again. That first step, the build step, that's where the minimum viable product, or MVP, comes in. Now, this is not your perfect, polished, final version. Not even close. It's the absolute bare bones version you need just to start learning. Remember, the goal of an MVP isn't to build a masterpiece. It's all about starting that learning loop as fast and as cheap as you possibly can. So, let's say an idea has survived the ordeal, it's been tested, and it's proven it has some real potential. Now it needs fuel to grow. And this brings us to the ultimate boon in our hero's journey: funding. There are two main paths here, and they really represent two totally different philosophies. On one side, you've got bootstrapping. That's when you use your own money. The huge advantage? You keep 100% ownership and control. It's all you. On the other side is venture capital, or VC. This is where you raise huge amounts of money from investors by trading a piece of your company, or equity, for cash. It's a path built for one thing: pure, explosive speed. This chart just visualizes that trade-off perfectly. Bootstrapping is like the slow and steady tortoise. It's lower risk because it's your money on the line, and the reward is solid, but it's contained. Venture capital, that's the rocket ship. It's extremely high risk for absolutely everyone involved, but it's designed for one thing and one thing only: the chance at a massive, world-changing reward. It's about shooting for the moon. So we've covered the what and the how, but the last piece of this whole puzzle isn't a tactic, it's the why. It's that fundamental mindset that makes this whole crazy journey even possible in the first place. The investor Peter Thiel created this absolutely brilliant framework to explain the entrepreneurial mindset. He argues that people basically view the future in one of four ways. First, do you think things will get better or worse? That's optimistic versus pessimistic. And second, do you have a specific plan, or are you just kind of hoping for the best? That's defined versus undefined. So where does the entrepreneur fit in all this? Right here, the top right quadrant. Defined optimism. They don't just hope for a better future. They have a concrete vision for it and a detailed plan to build it themselves. They're the ones who see a world that doesn't exist yet and they say, you know what, I'm going to make that happen. And that all leads us to this final, really provocative question, also from Peter Thiel. It's the question that every entrepreneur is constantly asking themselves. It challenges all of us to look around, see what's missing, and think about what role we might play in building it. Because the next great idea isn't just going to magically appear. Someone, somewhere, has to decide to build it.